I am more powerful than the Chancellor. I can overthrow him. And together, you and I can rule the galaxy. Make things the way we want them to be.
I don't believe what I'm hearing. Obi-Wan was right. You've changed.
I don't want to hear any more about Obi-Wan. The Jedi turned against me. Don't you turn against me?
I don't know you anymore. Anakin, breaking my heart. You're going down a path I can't follow.
JP?
Yes.
Who would you say is the hero of Star Wars?
Well, many heroes, but the greatest hero, perhaps, I would have to say, without a doubt, Anakin Skywalker.
Anakin Skywalker, really?
Greatest hero ever lived, yeah.
Greatest hero ever lived until he became the worst villain
That's
ever.
right. That's right. It's an interesting thing. And, I mean, if you think about it, he is really one of the worst. I mean, he murders younglings, for Christ's sake. It's
Sure.
as bad as it gets.
Right. He's a complicated character.
Very
For
complicated.
to be kind of the center of the universe, or at least the center of the movies.
You know, he's a very lonely character in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I mean, I think, like any great societal thing, we can start pointing fingers at who's to blame for the creation of Darth Vader.
Sure. That would
But-
be the Jedi.
Possibly.
Right.
Palpatine certainly has a hand. But let's go way back.
Okay.
All the way back.
Oh, we're going
Long,
are we
long
going,
time ago.
Are we going back before the movies? Are we going how far back do you want to go?
I just want to go back to Tatooine, circa. Oh man, I can't do that battle before the battle.
Before
of Yavin
Battle
stuff.
of Yavin, that would probably be like what 30
30
BBY.
I'd like to go to the Phantom Menace.
Okay, Phantom Menace. That's year one of the story of Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, if this is Anakin's day in court, let's tell the full story of Anakin.
All right. Let's start with before we go to Phantom Menace.
Okay.
Right? Let's just start with Anakin was born on Tatooine. And we know that for a fact. He was Shmi was on Tatooine and had the mysterious conception.
Yes, immaculate
Immaculate
Yes,
conception, I
yes.
guess is. They don't say it's immaculate conception. They just say it's
without a father.
Without a father.
I think they actually might have said the words conceived without a father. I don't know if they.
I don't know if they said the words conceived.
Yeah, it seems dirty to say conceived in Star Wars somehow.
Yeah. It was kind of a dirty scene when she was talking about it. I was like, they're going to talk about sex in Star Wars.
I was thinking about this earlier today, actually. The part where Padme in would that be Attack of the Clones or is that Revenge of the Sith? It must be Revenge of the Sith when she says that she's pregnant.
Yep.
And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out later." And he's happy. I was like, God, it's weird because they say she's pregnant, but they never really. I guess what I'm saying is it's up to the viewer to decide if pregnancy happens based on sex in the Star Wars universe or not.
I
I mean,
there's sex in Star Wars. We talked about this last week.
Okay.
So there's sex going on.
Well, it's maybe. I'm just saying is in the Star Wars universe, it seems strange that a kid can be born without a father, but I don't think it feels as strange as it should. You know? like people really take it at face value.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And yeah. Anyhow, that's a little bit of a derailment, but
all right. So
I'm going to think about it as we go forward.
Yeah. So Anakin was born. There was no father. That's basically the words that Shmi used.
Yeah.
So from age 0 to age 10,
Yeah, it's a 10-ish.
Right? That's when we find him in Phantom Menace. We don't really know what happens in those 10 years other than he's born into slavery, I guess.
For at least probably 6 months to a year, he's been working on that C-3PO.
He was building C-3PO out of a kit.
Mm-hmm.
He built a pod racer. He raced pod racers.
Yeah.
This is all we really know about him.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of curious as to how exactly does Shmi end up in slavery? Like, is there a caste system where you're born into slavery in Tatooine? Or was she, like, abandoned? Or
are we going to find out, like, is slavery on Tatooine going to be abolished in Star Wars Rebels? Because it doesn't seem like there's slavery by the time Luke is around.
That's very true.
You know?
Like, maybe Darth Vader just passes an edict, like, no slavery.
No more slavery, yeah.
But we talked about this last episode, and they don't seem to have much presence on Tatooine.
Right, yeah.
So,
well, maybe it's just system
maybe
one.
they don't have presence because he's purposely kind of kept the Empire away from it.
Right.
But why would he do that if there was slavery? Well, maybe we'll figure it out as we dissect his characters.
All right. Well, before we go too far into this, maybe we should introduce ourselves.
Oh, that's right. We said we were going to jump into it this
right,
episode.
we totally
really
jumped
did.
into it. Yeah, so this is Star Wars Delusions of Granular podcast, and you're listening to Ron and
JP.
We are talking about Anakin Skywalker this episode. This is going to be the first part of our two-part episode.
Our first ever two-parter.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Anakin this time around. Next week, we're going to talk about Darth Vader.
Yep.
Kind of link those two. Obviously, they're the same character, but kind of link the personas in back-to-back episodes.
Yes. Yep.
So, yeah, I hope you'll join us for both of these episodes because, well, our goal is to maybe try to talk about something that hasn't been said about these characters before.
Right.
I think we'll have a little bit easier time with Anakin because, obviously, he's the newer character in the Star Wars timeline, and Darth Vader's been around since 1977, and Anakin really only came into a realized character for Phantom Menace.
Though counting the Clone Wars now, he's got hours and hours and hours more screen time than Darth Vader ever got.
Right. So, what we're going to do is try to keep this episode to just really talking about the life of Anakin Skywalker before he turns to Darth Vader.
Right.
And we'll probably end this episode around the big moment when he's like, no!
Yeah, the end of the prequels, I think.
And that'll be the start of the next episode when we start talking about Darth Vader.
So when you hear the words no... anyhow, so yeah, the... Oh, you know what, though? We should really encourage people to get on this debate about is Anakin the greatest hero ever or not.
Yeah.
Send us an email at SWDOG, that's SWDOG77 at gmail.com.
Or talk to us on Facebook. Please like us on Facebook at facebook.com/SWDOG. We are getting a lot more likes there. We thank everybody who's joined us there for liking our posts on Facebook, and we promise to hope to grow the community and provide some interesting content for you guys to comment on or at least just read. Mm-hmm. Also, if you are so inclined, please leave us a review on iTunes.
Yes, please leave us a review on iTunes. I'm really shooting for that.
We know you guys are out there. We know you're listening. We really would like some feedback. That'd be wonderful. Whether you're listening to us on iTunes, I guess you could leave us a review on Stitcher. We don't quite know how that works, but we are on Stitcher as well as Twitter. We're on Twitter at SWDOG77. So my goal is to be better about posting things on Twitter, getting the word out that way. So look for us on Twitter, and hopefully we'll gain some followers there.
Quick question about Twitter. Are there any real people on Twitter anymore, or is it just marketers and other podcasters? It's like I kind of feel like it's only...
Well, I think it's...
if you're a real person out there, tweet at us to let us know you're alive.
Sure.
Not to say marketers aren't real people. I mean...
Well... Yeah, I don't know much. I feel like I was on the Twitter bandwagon for a while, and then I was like, no.
I think everyone was. I think we all were, and now we're all not.
I was trying to gain followers, but I realized most of my gained were just bots. So, tell us you're not a bot out there and follow us.
Yeah, hashtag not a bot. Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks.
So let's get back to Anakin. So he was born...
Little Annie.
Little Annie was born on Tatooine, and there was no father, but...
But which will become a theme, he'll take on many surrogate fathers, starting first with Watto.
Okay, yeah,
right?
that's good. Yeah, that's a good way to jump in. Sure, Watto. Watto seems to treat him, even though Watto owns him, kind of treats him with some respect. Yeah, even though he's a little kid.
Sort of like the relationship between a more abusive relationship, but similar to Luke and R2. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Watto ends up owning the mother and son. Yeah, but they have a nice living arrangement. They
have their own quarters. God knows what Shmi does, but
that is true. We never find out what Shmi does.
She's gone all day.
Mysterious figure. Have they even really did they expand on her in the novel?
Not a ton. A little bit in the first book. I haven't read all the other novelizations yet. I'm still missing Attack of the Clones. I really wish I would have read Attack of the Clones, The Clone Wars, and Revenge of the Sith. I haven't read those yet.
All right.
Because I'm sure they have great stuff in them.
Sure.
Because the novelization of The Phantom Menace has one of my favorite little off-screen characters, the old spacer.
The old spacer. Nice.
The old spacer. So he's little Annie's running around with his friend. What's his friend's name? I know you know it. He's coming. Wizard.
Kitster?
Kitster! Yes,
yeah,
Kitster.
And a young Greedo? Was that supposed to be a young Greedo, or they just...
I've always heard it was supposed to be a young Greedo, but I refuse to believe it.
I don't think it's a young Greedo, yeah.
Although it is kind of cool if he grows up to just be like a shitty bounty hunter. But, so... Also, he's like a bounty hunter within the same 3-mile area that he grew up.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
Right. Also, how did he grow up on Tatooine when his home planet is Rhodia?
Yeah, right? Yeah, and would he be a slave also?
Also, he seems amphibious.
Yeah.
That race seems amphibious.
Yeah, it seems like a really bad place for him to hang out.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
you're a dumbass.
Well, maybe he's a slave, and that's why he's there. Anyhow.
Maybe. There's also some little girls.
Yes, one played by a young George Lucas Skyan.
Oh, was that?
Right? I thought one of his daughters was one of those kids.
Okay, maybe.
But yeah, you can always email us at SWDOG77@gmail.com and let us know.
Yeah.
But so him and his friends are running around. I think they're getting some kind of space cokes or space ice cream. And
sure, from that old lady.
Yeah,
Annie, there's a storm coming, Annie.
That's right. Yeah, she actually is in there. And they run across an old space pilot. They call him the Old Spacer.
So they're like the little rascal.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Like little rascals.
Little dog has a circle around his eye.
Mm-hmm. A little space dog.
There's a buckwheat.
Yeah. Well, that was Greedo. But they so the spacer buys them Cokes or something. I can't remember exactly, but they get hooked up with the spacer. And he starts telling them about, I used to fly them all. Big destroyers, little ships, this and that.
Right.
Saw the whole world. And it basically lights up this little kid's imagination. And he's like, I want to go do all that someday.
Okay.
And that's kind of like the beginning. The hopeful beginning for Annie.
Wasn't there also... So, before I jump into this, they don't really... Do they ever really bring up that little Annie has a dark side to him?
Now, that's an interesting thing, because I don't think that happens in The Phantom Menace.
Well, wait. I think that it does. I think there was a deleted scene from The Phantom Menace when it actually was filmed, where little Annie is beating up the little Greedo character.
Really?
Yeah, I think that there's a fight that was cut from the movie.
They probably cut it because Jake Lloyd couldn't do dark.
Well, I mean, it was just like two kids, kind of jumping on each other and punching each other. They weren't acting.
Honestly, I really do feel like that is the number one thing that that's the number one thing that The Phantom Menace is missing is more Little Annie.
Yeah,
like
dark Little Annie.
No, well, maybe it's a little bit of that, but like more of just what this kid's life is.
Right.
Because it's awfully weird that is one of the more jarring things is the shift.
Sure.
Because we're not you're not really following the character's story so much. I know it's weird compared to A New Hope, and you start with the droids and Princess Leia and see Vader and all that stuff, and then you don't meet Luke until later.
Yeah. Which
I guess is what they're trying to echo with the Phantom Menace.
Well, here's the thing: is like,
but isn't it like 40 minutes in or something?
Well, yeah. I know we're not one to criticize the prequels on here because we maintain that the prequels are better than most people give credit.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
But
great films.
Great film. I would say one of the issues, and it's still I still think it's telling a good story. I think even the acting is fine in the movie.
Yep.
But I would say one of the problems with The Phantom Menace is we don't have a central character that we see the world through their eyes.
Right. And I guess that's what I'm getting at with this. That I would have liked to meet Jake Lloyd earlier and see of his life.
Right.
Because that's what you get with Luke. You're invested. You understand where he is. You understand that he feels like he's looking for something.
Right.
And you don't get enough of that.
You don't get enough of that through Jake Lloyd.
And the old state.
You don't get that through Liam Neeson or Ewan McGregor. You're not really, there's no character that represents the audience member.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah. And it's a funny thing, too, because they insert a scene later on that I love where he's really cold on the ship. It's the first time away from Tatooine.
Yeah.
I just love that scene because you do empathize with him a little bit. You get the idea of he is just a scared little kid.
Right.
And but I'm kind of jumping ahead.
Oh, yeah.
So okay. So let's break this down because otherwise we're already spending 15 minutes on Little Annie.
Little Annie, sure.
But it's important because I do feel like Jake Lloyd gets a short shift.
Yes.
I think he did a great job as a little kid actor.
Absolutely.
And I think it is an interesting time. And what's weird is that we don't cut back to him until Attack of the Clones when he's 16 or 17, right?
Yes.
I think maybe he's 15. At the youngest.
In Attack of the Clones, I want to say he's. I don't see. Here's where I get confused with ages, because I guess
you can just say it, Rob. Come on, say it.
Jesus.
Okay.
I always think that what Lucas was trying to do was kind of tell the story of Jesus if he wasn't good.
Right.
Okay.
Wow, what an interesting. Okay, right? Yeah.
And this is where I get confused. Is the whole. I'm not trying to be overly religious here.
No.
Right, but the story of Jesus in the Bible is told, and I didn't read the Bible. I'm just going by what I've learned, when I was in, Bible studies as a kid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you were a Jesuit priest.
That's right. But no, the story of Jesus, you know about him when he's younger.
Yep.
Okay.
Immaculate birth.
Right.
And then it kind of cuts, and he's 12 or something.
He's
preaching.
12, and then it cuts, and then he's 30.
Right.
And this is where I get confused, is I mix up the story of Anakin Skywalker with the story of Superman, because Superman is telling the same thing, where you know Superman when he's 12, and then it cuts to when he's 30. Just like Jesus. Okay?
Wow, see, I've never been comfortable with the Superman-Jesus comparison, but I'm extremely comfortable with the Anakin-Jesus
Well, so that's
comparison.
the thing. I think, and this is just my opinion of this, is I think that's what Lucas was trying to go for, was let's tell the story of Jesus, not in an overly religious fashion, but let's tell the story of Anakin Skywalker as he parallels the story of Jesus.
Right.
But he ends up being bad instead of Jesus, who was good.
And I mean, that ties into one of the big themes of Star Wars of redemption,
Right?
And
you have this kid who was born immaculate conception.
Yep.
We skip large periods, at least in the movies. We skip large periods of where he grows up.
Yes.
It was told in the EU, but that's been wiped away.
Are we talking about Jesus? Or?
We're talking. Yes, there's the whole.
The EU cleared up a lot about Jesus.
The extended edition of the.
God, I really wish they would have called, instead of calling it Legends, they would have called it the Books of Apocrypha. That would have been way cooler. But
there's still a chance, Disney.
Yeah.
Get on that.
But yeah, I think that's an extremely valid point. I'm glad you brought that up. So it's kind of interesting, because it's kind of like, what if Jesus had all these like kind of political puppet masters pulling strings?
Right. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I mean, so let's look at how it goes down. If Shmi is our oh man, almost said Maid Marian. If Shmi is our
Mary,
yes. Then this is like, I mean, okay, there's no good comparison. So like, who's a knight in the Bible? But
well, I mean, I guess. Okay, let's just make like random, like fill in the gap people here.
Lancelot comes.
Lancelot.
Well,
he was with Jesus.
Well, sure. Yeah.
No, I was thinking that 3 wise men show up.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
That would be Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Padme.
And he sleeps with the third wise man.
Right. That's where he starts to turn bad.
Makes a twin baby. Yeah.
I mean,
you decoded it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, like everything with Lucas, he's taking bits and pieces.
He's taking
things. Yes.
Like I'm not necessarily saying this is fact or this is just my theory, but I always thought that this was what Lucas was kind of going for, is telling the story of Jesus in a way that.
That's weird. I really like that interpretation, because honestly, I was going to personally believe that it was more of a oh man. People hate this little kid, and 9/11 just happened, and just recast and move forward.
Oh, really? You thought? Oh, well.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to think that Lucas had this planned out.
Yeah.
Now,
I'd love to see some documents, though.
Right. That's the thing. Is the what I've been reading about how Lucas works and how he formed the saga is he always kind of. As he was building things, he always gave himself an out. So if for some reason he couldn't get the same actors, then fine, we can kill this person off, or we can leave this person. This is getting off topic, but the big thing with like putting Han Solo in carbonite and not knowing if he was going to survive or not. The reason he did that is because Harrison Ford had not signed for the 3rd movie. Like we're all just sitting there in the audience. It's like, is he going to make it or is he not? And the business side of that is, well, yeah, because Lucas didn't know if Harrison Ford was going to come back or not.
That's really true. I mean, after the first movie, he had Splinters of the Mind's Eye in the chamber because it was going to be cheaper if the first movie wasn't a success.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you're really right. He does do that with everything.
Yeah, everything he does, he always has like a backup plan to like we all think that Lucas had this big overarching plan of how this was all going to play out.
Yeah.
He had ideas, but at the end of the day, he didn't have like things written in stone because there's so many different variables when you're making a movie, or at least the Star Wars movies. He didn't know.
Yeah.
He didn't know who was going to return. He had signed Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill for another movie, so that's why they were written into Splinter of the Mind's Eye.
Weird thing. Do you think he's seen any movies past the 70s other than his own? So I was just thinking. I was like, yeah. Then he sees Glass House, and he's like, this Hayden kid could be a good Anakin.
Oh yeah.
But then I was
my life is a house.
So I thought something Glass House.
That's the shattered glass.
No.
That's the two movies he made. Two movies. You're combining two movies. Hayden
really?
Christensen did two movies.
It's not called The Glass House?
No. My Life is a House.
Okay.
And that's the one where he's kind of like...
That's the one I was thinking of.
He's the one where it's like he's the punk kid. He's got like black eyeliner and dark
that girl,
spiky
that
hair.
Girl who was supposed to be big.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I actually didn't see it. But
Okay.
I know that he did that movie. And then he did Shattered Glass, where he plays the journalist who completely fabricates his stories.
Oh, yeah, that's a different movie.
And that was a great movie. I saw that one.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Huh. But I was just thinking, I was like, I can't really picture George Lucas watching those movies.
Yeah, I don't...
It's weird, right? And I have never heard him comment on a movie. Like, you never hear him be like, oh, yeah, Pulp Fiction was great.
Right, yeah. He probably hasn't seen Pulp Fiction.
Very interesting.
Right.
Anyhow, that's an aside. So, little slave boy, immaculately conceived, working for a reptile man, pod racing in this like drag strip culture that is on Tatooine at the time.
Which Lucas definitely was writing in because that was his experience.
Totally.
You had I don't know if you made this comment on the air or not, but you had a comment a few weeks ago is like your thought on the whole pod racing scene in Phantom Menace was this was Lucas going back, looking at Return of the Jedi and not really liking the way the effects turned out for the speeder bike scene.
Yep.
So he's like, I'm gonna make it better and I'm gonna put it in this movie and have a real fast racing scene because racing was my life at a certain period of time.
I think that's completely what it was all about.
Right. So that was, okay, so that's Lucas putting his life into Star Wars.
Yeah,
right?
and something he's always done.
Well, okay, so I bring up this question.
Sure.
Is Anakin Skywalker Lucas? Or is Anakin Skywalker Lucas's dad?
Anakin Skywalker.
Like,
oh, okay.
Like, who is
interesting.
Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That Luke.
Yes.
Luke Skywalker.
Not Luke, John, and
Like,
Paul.
yes, we're off the Bible thing. Luke is obviously in Star Wars. Luke is in A New Hope. He's Lucas, like Luke.
Yeah.
Luke, Lucas, duh.
Wandering dreamer.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Lucas's father was, very against George Lucas going to film school, and following his dreams, and
he's the kid in the garage tinkering.
Yeah,
with
you
things.
can see Luke Skywalker. You can see George Lucas and Luke Skywalker.
Agreed.
But then he continues on, and you can start to see, this is Vader was kind of Lucas's father, I guess, in a way. Or there was at least a father figure that was a little bit more stern.
Distant.
Right?
Cold.
But Lucas, as he's writing his story, he changes that all up, and all of a sudden Anakin is now a real character.
Right.
Apart from Darth Vader.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So who is Lucas shifting his focus and he's like, I was Luke Skywalker in the original trilogy. Now am I Anakin Skywalker in the prequels? Mm-hmm. And Anakin Skywalker, he had problems with the way the system ran.
Yeah.
Which Lucas had problems with the way the entertainment system ran.
He loses his wife.
He's
alone inside of a machine.
Right. So now is he, is he writing himself into the Anakin Skywalker character?
I mean, that is... I know you're getting through that secret history of Star Wars. I know that writer puts that theory forward quite a bit.
Sure.
I remember thinking it was very strange, even when the Faces release came out, the THX Dolby Sound videotape.
Oh, yeah, the ones with the Yoda and Darth Vader.
Yep, and the Leonard Maltin interview at the end of each one.
Yeah.
And the Leonard Maltin interview where you start talking about, I believe he says it was going to be 9 films at one point, and he says that it's the story of Darth Vader. Like, we're only seeing one, that we're only seeing one segment, but it's always been about Anakin.
Right.
And which... even as a kid, I was like, really?
Well, okay. Like, what I've been reading in the Secret History of Star Wars is it was originally 12 stories.
Yes.
Okay.
I've heard that since.
And it was 12 because the serials that George Lucas went to go see as a kid in the theaters, the movie serials of Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers.
Yep.
That always every episode ended on a cliffhanger, but it all finished up in 12 episodes.
Right, yeah.
Right? So that's where Lucas got the idea, I'm going to make it 12.
Yeah, he arbitrarily said 12.
Right. And then as he was going, he was, he combined, what Lucas did is he combined a lot of characters together. Like he had a lot of, different characters that, different things. You had a lot more bureaucrats, and you had a lot more military leaders, and a lot more Jedi, and what he did as he was writing his writing process over the first 3 years when he was actually writing Star Wars was he simplified things. So he combined characters. So you had a Father Skywalker character who was around for a long, long time.
Right.
Like kept him going in the script, and eventually he just incorporates that character, Father Skywalker, into Darth Vader. That character becomes.
Whoa. Let's hold off on talking about Father Skywalker until we get to Darth Vader.
Sure. But what I'm trying to get at is, like, Lucas didn't have, like, a big plan for Anakin until later on. It's not like he, like, conceived of Anakin right from the get-go.
Right. And I feel like that. I feel like that is. You can kind of see that in the story, because in some ways it's a more mature story. The story of Anakin.
Sure. Yeah, it's a more complex story. I think it's. I think one of the big issues with the prequels is they are not just something that you can kind of flip on and just kind of passively watch and not really and enjoy. Like, if you really want to enjoy the movies, well, you have to kind of follow the plot. There's a bigger plot to follow in these movies.
Yeah. Right? And certainly I think that's the biggest barrier of the prequels is figuring out the Trade Federation and
right. But also just the complexity. Like, this isn't a show about the prequels, but the complexity of the character and the complexity of Anakin Skywalker in all three prequels. Like, so we learn about this kid when he's young, right? And we follow him, but we don't really get to know him, right?
Right.
And what you were saying earlier is what we're both saying is that was maybe a problem with the prequels, right?
Yeah.
But what if it was intentional?
Yeah.
Like, what if we're not supposed to?
And actually, I'm just going to interrupt you real quick, because intentional or not, it is what it is.
Yes.
And so, like, a different reading of it, rather than being intentional or not, because I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who will point out facts about it not being intentional, but just being a different read of it.
And those people are wrong.
Right. We can say that. We have a podcast.
Right. They can have their own podcast and prove us wrong.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Just wanted to stem the hate right away.
Yeah, right. But I guess what I'm getting at is, like, I think that Lucas did know what he was doing with the prequels. Like, a lot of people criticize him. He's like, he wrote he's not a great storyteller anymore, and he's, doesn't know how to write dialogue. What I'm getting at is, like, I don't think we were supposed to really ever get on board with Anakin. We weren't supposed to, as a kid, we weren't supposed to see him. He's a cute kid. Like, Jake Lloyd's cute.
Yeah.
But he's not necessarily, like, a friendly kid.
Right.
Like the way he's portrayed. There's some distance to
there's some odd things.
How we see him. And that through the way the story is told.
Agreed.
The kid doesn't really know anything about the outside world. He thinks Padme is an angel from
the moons of whatever.
Yeah, Yago.
Yeah, I want to bring that line up specifically.
Yeah,
that's
a very interesting line. I think, like, I like, everybody else, like, kind of cringed at some of those lines at a certain point when I was watching the prequels, and that whole scene with, him thinking that Padme is an angel from the moons of Yago or whatever it is, right? Definitely is cringeworthy. But if you start to dive into like the psychology of that line, I think it's a very interesting point. Is this kid doesn't really get like humans,
right?
He doesn't get.
Here we go.
He doesn't get. Your eyes light up because you're like, oh, we're gonna get to the robotic part of Anakin Skywalker. But he doesn't get females. He has a mom. He falls in love with the first girl besides his mom that he sees.
Yeah.
And ends up having this very kind of troubled relationship with her.
Yeah. Strange relationship too, where she's sort of like also his first surrogate mother figure.
Right.
Like because it's the first time he's gone, like he seeks comfort from this, she's a full-blown adult to him.
Right.
Right.
So I maintain that what Lucas was doing was intentional. Like he was writing this character to be
I love this
truly flawed.
Yeah.
And as an audience, we don't have anybody to really gravitate towards.
Well, flawed, but also he's also kind of a blank cipher, right? He's like a blank slate of unfulfilled potential.
Yes.
I mean, that's really a theme throughout the entire prequels.
Right.
Is the idea that, like, even going back to A New Hope, when they talk about Anakin, it's like he was a great pilot. He was all this great stuff, and killed by Darth Vader.
Right.
And, like, yeah. So, I mean, like, it's a very... I like that a lot, the idea that, like, you're not meant to be seeing the world through his eyes.
Right.
Because he's both damaged and... Also, you're supposed to just see, a cute kid who's ruined.
Right, and then, we jump, we jump like 5, 8 years, whatever, to, Attack of the Clones, and now we see him as a teenager, and he's clearly having problems with Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
You see them bickering. You see Obi-Wan trying to... get a handle on this kid.
Mm-hmm. This young firebrand.
Yeah, and again, he's the dialogue, the interactions are not written in a way that like it's not friendly.
And now, before we get there, though, I mean, I think there's very good reason for it not to be friendly. Because I mean, let's look at. We just said he's ruined. Well, what ruins him? Aside from being born a slave, where he's risking his life day and night playing, doing pod racing and what have you.
He's also raised by Jedi who have
taken him from his mother.
Well, not only taken him from his mother, but they also like shun any kind of human contact.
Yeah, no emotion.
Yeah.
No human contact.
Yeah, don't have any attachments.
Yeah. It's very... And it's one of those things where it's still, even now I think about it, it's like, that's so jarring, because it's just not what I pictured from the Jedi when I was watching the originals.
Right.
But it has to be purposeful. Because
it has to be. Like, Lucas knew what he was doing. Like,
yeah, because it's so cold and gross, So he's ripped away from his parents, or his mother.
His mother.
And now, the big character here, for me, is Qui-Gon Jinn. How different of a world would he have grown up in with Qui-Gon Jinn as his mentor?
Right, because I think we talked about this before on the podcast. We maintained that Qui-Gon Jinn was more... He was the rogue Jedi.
He's the pot-smoking hippie.
Yeah, he was more about like having the relationships with people, the living force he talks about.
Yep, he was into like the ideas of it, but it wasn't so into the doctrine. It didn't have to be by the book.
Right.
It
would have been interesting to see, kind of a prequel to the prequels, where it's Qui-Gon Jinn's story and like how the Jedi Council sees him.
Yeah.
Is he like the outsider? And we don't really see.
Because you brought that read up. I never really thought about it that way until you started talking about it and rewatching him. Like, you do catch that, like, he goes against the Jedi's ruling. He kind of does his own thing, and everyone's like, clearly he's respected, but kind of like a little on the fringes, a little grating.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then they kill him off, and people are like, "Oh my God, you killed off the best character." But like, as they had to kill off Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, they kind of had to kill Qui-Gon off to further the story that Lucas wanted to tell, because Lucas wanted to tell this character of the story of a flawed character, not a story of maybe a possibly flawed character that a Jedi can kind of correct his ways. There's no conflict there.
And also because that's a great thing too, because you see also, like, so he plays Qui-Gon Jinn plays fast and loose with the rules, and it's like, I want to take this kid on as my Padawan. They're like, well, you already have a Padawan, so don't even bother. And he's like, he's already ready to go.
Yeah, right.
He's a master now.
Right.
Peace. That's my Padawan. And like, so you see this character who throughout the whole movie hasn't really done much, has been kind of whiny, not the Obi-Wan we thought he would be, with a Padawan braid that's disgusting, and he's wearing it the whole time. And then by the end of the movie, we see him lose control and straight up kill Darth Maul in anger. He's using, I think he's firmly touching the dark side at that point.
Yeah, right.
And this is the guy who's going to take on this like super powerful young boy. Foolish.
It's messed up.
Yeah.
It's messed up.
So clearly, so right there is strike one. And strike one against Anakin never growing up to have a happy life.
Yeah, right,
right. So in the intervening years, I think clearly his rage has built.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
He missed out on what was clearly a surrogate father figure.
Yeah, we see him in Attack of the Clones. He's clearly angry. He's angry at Obi-Wan. Mm-hmm. You know, he's angry at the Jedi Council. You know, so he ends up finding another father figure.
Yeah.
Palpatine. Palpatine is, you know, telling him what he wants to hear, telling him that he's a good kid, that, you know, he's better than all these fools. You know, he's telling him what he wants to hear. And honestly, in a way, Palpatine's right.
Yeah.
You know, Palpatine is right. You know, he is... The Jedi are kind of wrong at this point.
Oh, 100%.
You know?
100%.
I mean, Palpatine was power hungry and, you know, had his ulterior motives, but what he's telling Anakin isn't...
Well, yeah, I mean, I think
false.
That's always the way with true evil, right?
Right.
Half-truths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the ones that get you. So, I mean, so there you go. There's the other father figure, because really Obi-Wan just can't measure up as a father figure because he's just barely out of kiddom himself.
Right.
You know? He was jumped up way above his stature.
Yeah.
And then, so we have all that, and then who's another character who plays a big influence in Anakin's life?
Well, Padme.
Padme.
Padme's huge, because Padme...
Now, Padme, here's another character who was girl queen, jumped up on her station, you know, had to grow up quick, and is another person who's in some ways taking advantage of a situation, you know? She's not allowed to get very close to people either because of her political stature.
Right. And she doesn't know anything about human relationships either.
True.
Because she's a young queen, thrust into this position, like isolated from the world, basically. She has, you know, CO Bibble around her. And she's not
sure
learning.
He explained this.
She's
yeah. Disgusting. Yeah. But
she'd be better off with Captain Tanaka.
Oh, Captain Tanaka. But yeah, so she's also in no real great place to give emotional response as well.
Right.
And she also has this weird kind of like power, like she has a bit of a power above Anakin. You know what I mean? Because Anakin kind of has a fixation on her, both as like a surrogate mother figure in a way, but also because he's a teenager, like this like weird sexual thing too.
Yeah,
and it comes off as very weird in Attack of the Clones, right? Like
it does come off weird.
You see when it comes off, so it looks like a stalker movie.
Yeah, right.
Those are great.
I mean, it's. I will say that, you know, out of the prequels, Attack of the Clones is the hardest to watch because of the awkward romance between those two.
Yeah.
But again.
Yeah, going with your read, if it's all intentional.
It's intentional, right? It's intentional because these are two very flawed characters.
Yeah.
You know, we're as as an audience, we are conditioned to think that the people we're watching are, they're either
Heroes and villains.
right. They're either heroes,
Sure.
okay, or they're flawed characters that can overcome their weaknesses, right? And what we're given in Attack of the Clones that leads into Revenge of the Sith is basically two characters that are flawed that can't overcome their weaknesses.
Totally. And
that's something that, as an American audience, we have never really gotten. That's traditionally what we don't get in movies.
Well, and who trained us that we should expect, archetypes?
Well, Lucas.
George Lucas and Steven
right.
Spielberg.
Right.
And that's part of the reason I feel like Anakin's story and the prequels in general are a more mature story from a more mature storyteller.
Right.
But
it's a mature story about immature characters, which is very tough.
Yeah, it's
like Padme is very immature in Attack of the Clones, even though she's trying to come across more mature than Anakin. She's telling Anakin, "Don't look at me that way. You're making me uncomfortable." And then, like the minute before they're sentenced to, the death in the arena, she's like, "I love you." Like,
yeah.
And that turns on a dime, and people look at that and it's like, "Oh, that's bad storytelling." No, that is flawed characters acting out because they don't know any other way.
Try this on for size. You're a young, no longer queen. She's a
senator.
Representative senator. Yes. You're a young senator. You're assigned a teenage boy. Imagine this. You're a young senator. You're assigned a teenage boy with a deadly weapon at his side at all times.
Right.
And he just starts, while you're packing your clothes, he starts just bitching about his boss and how he hates him and how he's better than everybody.
Yeah.
And what's your reaction? You kind of just listen to him and sort of placate him, like, well, that's how mentors are.
Right.
You don't report it and be like, this is weird. Like,
yeah, right.
Right. So, and that's probably another thing about the immaturity. She just doesn't know how to deal with this, and she's just talking to him on the same level and feeding into his thing.
Yeah, because she doesn't know. Like, she doesn't have these she has no
experiences.
experience with these.
Yeah. We don't know anything about her parents either.
No, we don't. Although
I'm not counting the EU stuff.
Well, cutscenes.
Okay.
We meet family members at a dinner. She also talks about a previous relationship with somebody.
Yes, that's in.
She also
Clone Wars,
in the movie, I think she talks about dating another diplomatic person.
Huh. I don't remember that.
Makes him a little jealous. But then in the Clone Wars, we actually meet Clovis.
Yes.
And in the Clone Wars, their relationship between Anakin and Padme gets even weirder and more creepy because so the Clone Wars takes place between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So they're married, but they're hiding it because they can't be public about it because he's a Jedi and she's a senator and it's against the rules.
And now I had a question about that too. Is that just an extension of their immaturity that they don't want to break the rules, or is there some kind of penalty or something? Like what's going to happen? He'll just be thrown out of the Jedi Order,
I guess.
And I guess it's just because it's like a brainwashed cult that he feels there's no life outside of that order.
I guess because we kind of see that through. Finally, we have a character that we're seeing through their eyes in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And that's Ahsoka. Ahsoka, we see, she's kind of the anti-Anakin. She is being brought up through the Jedi Order, but she's got a healthier upbringing.
And I want, now before we bring up Ahsoka, let's keep Ahsoka on the back burner for just 1 second and bring up the prophecy. Mm-hmm. Because that's a big thing here. Right there in the Phantom Menace, there's this prophecy that this young boy, if he's the one, will restore balance to the Force.
Sure.
And now balance to the Jedi means no Sith, no evil.
Yeah, is that really the case? I guess, they never really say... I don't know if the Jedi know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah, this prophecy seems
the balance. Whack. Yeah, the balance. We're supposed to believe that there's thousands of Jedi.
Yeah, at least hundreds.
Yeah, right? And there's... All of a sudden we find out that there's two Sith.
Right.
And
at the end of Phantom Menace.
At the end of Phantom Menace, Yoda and Mace Windu are talking with their hoods up, and they're like,
always an apprentice.
Always,
master,
yeah, right. So the thousands of Jedi are now afraid of two.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, okay, so wiping them out brings balance to the Force?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like balance to me.
That doesn't sound like balance.
Very unbalanced.
And if we go back to, the history of the Force, there was always a dark side and a light side. If we're going into the Legends...
Let's not go into Legends.
You don't want to go into Legends? Because the Legends... go
into Legends, yeah.
Well, I don't want to get into the Legends, but what Legends went off of was what Lucas's original ideas were, which was that when he came up with the idea of the Force, or as he called it originally, it was called the Force of Others. It wasn't just called the Force.
Okay.
Right? There was a bad side and a good side. And
the Ashla and the Boga?
Yeah, the Ashla. Ashla and the Bogan.
Ashla and the Bogan.
Right?
I love Bogan.
Right. So it's not like there was, there was always two sides.
Yeah, duality. I mean, that's a big thing in Star Wars, certainly.
Right. So, how's the Jedi gonna...
Well, I'd like to keep revisiting this question throughout this episode and the next one.
Okay.
Just periodically keep coming back and kind of keep a running scoreboard going.
Yeah.
Of is this action bring balance to the Force or not?
Okay.
Because I think there's several points in the Anakin story where it's did he do it there or did he not? And this is probably a good time. So we kind of covered Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that he has his first big success as a pilot there too. His Force guided.
Now this is pod racing.
yeah. We have a couple surrogate fathers. Yes. One stricken down.
Yes.
He's ripped away from his mother. Growing up kind of maladjusted in this cold, sterile environment.
Yeah.
Does sleep with the first woman outside of his mother he's met.
Right.
Particularly in the very sexually repressed Jedi Order.
Yes.
And we have the Emperor Palpatine filling in as surrogate father. The only person showing him some sort of actual paternal instruction.
Right.
So, kind of Obi-Wan too. But I feel like Obi-Wan and him are more brothers.
Obi-Wan, feels like more of an older brother that he doesn't really like.
Because he's not really... Yeah, because he himself isn't really mature enough to try.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So, I think that kind of covers everybody, except for Watto. Who will come...
Watto, I mean...
Yeah.
I think...
He's kind of a bad dad if he's a dad.
Yeah. I mean...
Yeah. And I think it was more of a one relationship. I think that Watto actually felt a lot more for Anakin than Anakin did for Watto, ultimately.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Don't you be talking bad about Watto.
Oh, I'm not. I'm saying he felt more.
Yeah, I think Watto was fine.
But I think
Watto was fine for the character he needed to be.
Oh, no, I love Watto.
Yeah.
But I think that Anakin saw him as a slave master.
Yeah, right.
And he kind of saw Annie as little Annie.
Yeah, right. I think
which we see in that scene.
We see that scene in Revenge of the Sith where he actually shows some heart when he sees Annie all grown up. He's, you can tell that there's some feeling there.
So, Attack of the Clones.
Yep.
He finally does it. He hooks up with Padme. They get married.
Yeah.
Also, very important, he faces off against Count Dooku and loses a hand.
Yes.
Loses a piece of himself.
Yes.
This little boy who could make machines that could talk to, interact with, but has trouble interacting with people.
Right.
Has a much more comfortable relationship with machines. You see that also with him in R2 in Attack of the Clones.
Sure. Yeah, and especially in Attack of the Clones, there's one whole story arc where R2 goes missing, and he risks everything kind of to go after this R2 unit when everyone's telling him, well, he's just a droid and droids can be replaced. And he's like, well, no, R2 means more to me than that.
Yes. So this is clearly, he's got some strange issues going on because he's really good friends with his toaster.
Yeah, right.
He feels more for his iPod than he does his older brother character, Obi-Wan.
Right.
Maybe. I feel like they're pretty close. I don't think Luke is going to have trouble choosing between R2 and Han. But I feel like Anakin might have a hard time choosing between R2 and Obi.
Yeah.
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 No, I was just thinking, like, wow, maybe we're all like more like Anakin.
Yeah.
You know,
That's that. That's
like,
just.
oh.
Oh,
Wait, what did you say, JP? I'm looking at my phone right now.
Yeah.
I gotta check my Facebook.
Looking at this sweet iOS 8 interface.
Yeah, that is an interesting point.
Yeah, because I forgot to emphasize his relationship to machines, which becomes more and more important as things go on.
Absolutely. So that brings us to basically, do we want to go into more of the Clone Wars with Anakin?
Yeah,
there's a lot there.
You're right. We have to. You're right. I want to jump right to Revenge of the Sith, but we got a whole.
There's a lot there. I mean,
of Anakin development.
I think maybe for this, since we're really just talking about Anakin, I think some of the stuff that happens in the Clone Wars with him is probably enough for a whole another episode, especially when he meets the father, the brother and sister, the sides of the Force. That whole episode. I forgot the planet they were on where they meet the spirits, the spirit of the Force. Mortis.
Yes.
So, but I think for the purposes of this discussion, what we really need to bring up about the Clone Wars is what it does is it accomplishes something that the prequels really don't, and that's bringing the human element into Anakin a little bit more.
Right.
It because it has the time to expand on the character, because it's a series and not just a movie, 3 movies, you actually can now kind of see different sides to Anakin. You can see that he means good. Mm-hmm. He's a hero. Yeah. He's definitely a hero of the Clone Wars, which, thank God, Obi-Wan did not lie about that to Luke. He was a hero of the Clone Wars. But you also see that, he will
have a dark side.
Well, yeah. I mean, he'll do anything he can for what he perceives to be good.
And I like that note right there to put a pin in this for just a moment.
Absolutely. So what we see in the Clone Wars is Anakin's justifies to himself that the ends justify the means.
Right. Certainly. And this is a through line for the character.
He I think there's a point where he even does he does the Force choke on someone.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's the greatest. That's in the Zelo monster or whatever.
I think so.
That monster arc where Ahsoka is being held hostage, or she's in some kind of peril, and there's someone who has information, and they're not talking, and he goes in without the other Jedi elders and goes in alone and starts asking for information. And the guy kind of starts to laugh him off, and he looks at him and is like, I'm not joking. And Force jokes and listen in the air.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's great about this is we see,
chilling moment.
Yeah,
so
but we see Ahsoka's reaction to it. She knows.
Well, for those just tuning in at home, what's the relationship here?
So Ahsoka is Anakin's Padawan.
So in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, Anakin gets a Padawan,
kind of thrust upon him. And this is the Jedi's way of saying, well, Anakin, maybe if you teach someone, you'll learn yourself.
Right. They've kind of tried. I feel like he's kind of a bucking stallion.
Yeah.
And they're trying to tame him by giving him responsibility.
Right. So Ahsoka is kind of the answer to that. And what we see through her eyes is... she is kind of, she learns to be impulsive. She learns to be kind of brash like Anakin.
Yeah.
And it backfires on her. And she realizes that that's not really the path that she should go down. She loses her lightsaber at one point and has to go on this mission to find it. It gets stolen. She does a couple other things that... really don't go her way. She loses, some pilots in battle under her command, and she realizes that maybe what her master is teaching her isn't really right, and she starts to see that her master is flawed, and that's something that's like up until this point, like we're as an audience, we're kind of supposed to get that on our own, and Ahsoka is really the audience's key to being like, okay, this is what you should be feeling right now about this character, because
certainly,
if we've been too subtle or you don't get it yet, here's Ahsoka's point of view. Like, here's finally a character that isn't a blind Jedi like Obi-Wan and Yoda and Mace, who kind of have their heads up their asses.
Yeah.
Like, Ahsoka is one who's like, what you're doing isn't necessarily right.
Well, interesting thing about Ahsoka is she starts off much like a casual Star Wars fan, totally indoctrinated.
Yeah.
She grows up in the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
And so when she is first put under his tutelage, early episodes, I mean, there's a lot of, it's a funny, like, she kind of treats it as if, like, she knows Anakin's doing things that aren't necessarily by the book, but it's kind of, she shakes it off, like, that's my funny master.
Right.
But by this 2/3 halfway point, she starts to really grow as a character and recognize that actually some of it's kind of scary. Like, there's kind of something a little scary about Annie sometimes.
Sure.
But
I'll put it this way, okay? Anakin Skywalker is the David Brent of the Jedi.
Okay.
Okay? David Brent is...
From The Office?
From The Office, okay? He's the actual Ricky Gervais of the UK version of The Office, right?
Yeah.
David Brent is the first day on the job, you have David Brent is your boss, okay? Yep. And David Brent is cracking jokes and being all one of the guys and hanging out.
And this is dawn. We've all woken up at the crack of dawn.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, I got a cool boss. He's kind of,
jokey.
He's jokey. He doesn't follow the rules. He's kind of rebellious.
Sure.
That's awesome, okay? 2 weeks into the job, you're like, I fucking hate this guy. He is annoying as hell.
Okay, well, I actually disagree now. I was with you at first. In terms of, like, the idea that, like, oh, yeah, it's cool he doesn't play by the rules. But it's more like halfway through, in a couple of weeks, you realize, ooh, some of those rules actually deserve to be there.
Well, that's what I mean.
I'm sorry, I take umbrage with the idea that Anakin's somehow annoying.
No, I don't mean he's annoying. I mean, like...
Well, he can be. A little bit.
Well,
a little bit.
Not David Brent annoying.
No.
Right? The whole point of David Brent was he was so annoying that you didn't want to be around him.
Right.
Because what he was doing wasn't, like, there's a time and a place for everything, and, and it's not every day at work that you are, you're the boss. Stop trying to be, everyone's friend.
Right.
Right? And what Anakin was doing is like, Anakin, you're the teacher. Stop, teach me the right way to do things. Stop being so rebellious yourself.
Now, the interesting thing about Anakin, though, is, he is, in the Clone Wars, pretty revered. He gets results, especially for the soldiers on the ground. They seem to really like him, the clone troopers.
Right.
Because he leads them, he goes into battle with them, and you always hear Vietnam vets and stuff talk about, like, Vietnam in terms of, like, we could have won it if they would have let us.
But he's also leading an army of men who were bred to do only one thing.
Well, time out, though. This Vietnam analogy, though, like, the idea of the, you always hear that, like, we could have won it if they would have let us. If they would have let us just win it our way and do that. And that's really what's at the heart of Anakin, the Clone Wars, is this idea that, like, the Jedi are somehow holding back because of their morals and the way that they work and the way they operate, that he could win the war if only they would let him. And that's...
Sure, I see that.
Yeah.
So,
which leads to more resentment on his part.
Yeah, he throughout the Clone Wars, he's still resenting the powers that be, and that's the Jedi Council, that's Obi-Wan. You know, there's a lot of you don't see Obi-Wan and Anakin together a lot in the Clone Wars. There's definitely a few arcs where you see them together, but there's a lot of where Anakin is off on his own, either by choice or just by circumstance.
Yeah, I got the impression that they're trying to give him a little more rope.
Yeah.
Because they want him to take it up and be responsible.
Right. And again, it's like, well, you know, as much as we were just talking about how the prequels were much more complex storytelling than, you know, what the people, the fans wanted, so is the Clone Wars. For a cartoon, it's still very complex. You know, there's all these themes going on in the background that, you know, yeah, they're giving him a lot more rope, and in a lot of ways he's becoming a hero, but not really
not a Jedi.
Yeah, you know, he's not really doing it by the Jedi way. You know, he's or Ahsoka in some ways covers for him.
Yes, totally. And the your Ahsoka eyes the audience comparison is very apt, because like we were talking earlier, like, this is a damaged character, and you're getting that in the first two, but you might be misreading it as being like, oh, it's clunky dialogue, it's clunky this, it doesn't feel right. But then when you see it through that other character, through Ahsoka, you realize, like, oh no, this is how it's supposed to be. He is damaged. Yeah. And they do it. They go into the slavery background thing and how that's damaged him. They even cover with the Mortis trilogy. They cover a lot about, you know, the father, the son, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's also where they really get back into that prophecy thing.
Right. So then, just to go off on another note, we have the villains of the Clone Wars.
Yes.
Okay, we have Dooku, which obviously was, you know, brought into play in Attack of the Clones, but is more in the Clone Wars, the series. And we have his, I guess, apprentice, Ventress.
I think they actually use the term assassin, right?
Okay, Asajj Ventress, who's not really a Sith.
Yeah.
But she knows the dark arts. You know, she knows the dark ways of the Force. She knows how to wield a lightsaber. And Obi-Wan and Anakin faced off with her many times. So, you know, they encounter her a lot.
Anakin rarely encounters Dooku, just because...
Right, because of the way the storytelling is, he can't really, you know... he's already had his hand cut off by Dooku, and we know in Revenge of the Sith that at the beginning Anakin kills Dooku, so they can't really play up on that storyline anymore without compromising what we already know.
Right.
You know.
And
Dooku, I mean, I guess that's Asajj where, you know, Asajj Ventress comes in. It's like, well, Dooku isn't going to fight, but he can send his minion out to fight. And, you know, and Asajj Ventress on her own is a strong character. And she has a strong arc. Yeah. You know, but I think, you know, just kind of rubbing off on these people, you know, rubbing into these people.
Yes.
You know, Anakin is seeing different sides of the Force.
Yeah, oh, completely. And I think also just being exposed to these villains will come in handy in his next life when he's... Because I feel like, particularly villains like the Arachnid character, Admiral Trench.
Oh, right.
Like, characters who have a very theatrical way about them and are able to kind of fight with fear, even more than action. Yes. I think it's something that he really absorbs and uses to great degree.
That's an interesting point. I should make a note of that, because when we do get into Darth Vader, I want to talk about, you know, Darth Vader's relationship with the Force and how he uses fear more so than just sheer brute force.
Yeah.
But I also have another thought. But go on about the other villains he encounters.
Yeah, I mean, he also encounters this at this age as Anakin. He encounters what's his name? The Hammer Horror guy, Tarkin. He encounters a young Tarkin, And Tarkin, he's a military man who's a very logical thinker and just doesn't have anything to do with the Jedi because they're all forced and silly.
Right.
And he kind of encounters Anakin as one of the few Jedi who feels actually have a real military mind and like.
Sure.
You know, and also I think he also recognizes that he's susceptible to manipulation.
Yeah. I
think he
think
kind of gets in on that surrogate father action too.
That's the
like,
thing.
Like
is,
pass him on the head, good boy.
That is an interesting thing. Like,
yeah.
The people that come across Anakin, like everybody that comes across Anakin, kind of right away they realize here's a troubled person.
Yeah.
You know, Padme definitely knows he's a troubled person.
Oh God!
Still falls in love with him because of her faults.
Yes.
Palpatine kind of tries to, take him under his wing and knows he can use that to his advantage because that's what Palpatine does.
Obi-Wan.
All the Jedi,
all the Jedi,
they all see that Anakin is a troubled person.
And super powerful.
Right, but they really don't know how to handle it because they just don't have any kind of way of dealing with that.
Yeah, because they're so they have such a strict doctrine that there's nothing they can do to augment their own behavior to accommodate this new situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
which I think is another Lucas thing of being part of a system and not fitting in and having to buck it.
Yeah. So, and everyone that's coming across him either realizes he's problems and doesn't know how to deal with it, realizes that he's a problem and uses it to their advantage, or realizes he's a problem and just kind of succumbs to his ways.
Right. Except Ahsoka,
and I guess Tarkin uses him, but yeah, Ahsoka definitely,
because Ahsoka is the only one
becomes her own person
who looks at him in the Jedi Order and recognizes that they're both wrong in different ways. You know?
Yeah. And
she just walks away from both of them ultimately.
Which is what I maintain is what Qui-Gon would have done if Qui-Gon was kept alive.
Yeah.
He
would have been the New Hope.
He would have, would have, in a way, Qui-Gon would have helped Anakin bring balance to the Force.
Oh, yeah.
Because in a way, that's what Qui-Gon was doing, is he was trying to bring balance to the Force. And what I mean by balance is not light side and dark side, but actually being in touch with emotions.
Yeah.
And also still being able to, when do you read a situation with emotion? When do you read without? Like, that's balance. That's not really...
Here's a question. Do you think he would have ever taken him back to see Shmi? Because that's the thing, is he's so in touch with things, but he also takes this little kid away from...
No, I still maintain that...
he was too much
that Qui-Gon slept with Shmi.
Oh, yeah. So that's why he had to leave.
Yeah, we got to get out of here.
I can't. Sorry, brother coming.
Sorry.
Gotta go.
Sorry, can't free you. Gotta go.
Ooh, alimony? They don't really give a lot of credits. I think actually we're exempt as a religion. So.
Oh, you don't take Republic credits?
Oh,
sorry.
The Outer Rim, that's right. Sorry. Yeah. So yes, Ahsoka walks away. Other notable things in the Clone Wars, they show that Anakin and Padme have a separation.
Yes.
Like they are clearly on the rocks.
Yes.
Having some troubles.
Yes.
Which accounts for why things are so unbearably awkward in Revenge of the Sith.
Sure. Yeah. He's kind of an abusive, not physically abusive, but kind of mentally abusive to her.
Certainly. Controlling,
yeah. And jealousy comes into play because she, there's this character Clovis who is kind of
her old boyfriend.
Yeah, was a boyfriend, or she just had feelings for him?
It's implied.
Yeah,
they definitely have a relationship.
And he's a diplomat as well, so she has to interact with.
Also notable here, there's a hypocrisy happening because Obi-Wan. We find out Obi-Wan's had a relationship with the Queen of Mandalore. Right.
Yes. Satine.
Yes. So once again, big brother, big virtuous brother, hypocrite.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, by the nature of the storytelling, like they've really painted Obi-Wan to kind of not be all that great.
Sure.
when we first encounter Obi-Wan, he's the wise, sage figure to Luke.
Yeah.
And just by the way the story was told, the story was rewritten so that what we believe Obi-Wan was telling Luke was the truth, and in fact it was all lies.
Which is one of the things that I really had a problem with the prequels initially, was that I felt that there was no big Luke, I am your father moment. There was no flip reversal that like threw everything on its head for me.
Sure.
But now, these years later, looking back on it, that is a pretty big flip.
Yeah.
Like, Obi wasn't a great Jedi.
No, he was not.
He got jumped up way too young.
Right.
And trained what would become the...
In a way, he kind of is trying to train himself.
Yeah, very true.
He's off on his own for most of the prequel.
And there's a lot of great arcs with him where he does this kind of investigative stuff like we see him do in Attack of the Clones, where he's kind of doing this private eye investigative thing. And one where he goes undercover as a bounty hunter, and he actually says, I rather like playing the bad guy. And you see that like he probably would have been happier in life as a bounty hunter or something.
Sure, yeah.
Like he was much more of that kind of like private eye. And like,
right, yeah.
He's not a very good trainer, that's for sure.
Right. I mean, I guess he's... I was going to say he's not really a good private eye either, but I guess he stumbles upon, what he needs to stumble upon.
He broke that clone trooper thing wide open.
With the help of Dax.
Yeah. Someday when we do the Boba Fett episode, I'd like to do a little compare and contrast with him and Anakin. With the missing fathers and
all that
stuff.
Yeah.
But... going forward, I think this brings us up to Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith. Okay, yeah.
So that opens right off the bat with him clearly crossing the line. Emperor Palpatine is on a Star Destroyer, held hostage. Dooku is the guy who's got him hostage and everything.
Yeah.
And he plays a little bait and switch game because he's actually both of their bosses.
Right. Yeah.
But
he's playing the two sides against the middle.
Yes, exactly. And he basically maneuvers it where Anakin has Dooku defenseless and could just subdue him. He says, "Kill him!" Right, and he does it. He beheads Dooku.
Yeah.
And
it's the first time we've seen him kill sand people.
No, have we seen that yet?
Yeah.
That happens in Attack of the Clones?
That happens in Attack of the Clones.
Oh, well,
we kind of glossed right over that. We should probably go back to that.
Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, you're right.
He kills innocent sand people.
Pre-Clone Wars. So that explains some of the darker things in Clone Wars.
Right.
Because he's already killed... He even says sand children.
Yeah.
Little
killed
sand
them all.
babies.
Killed them babies. Yeah. So... but that was off screen.
Well, yeah. But we see him like...
I mean, he admits to it to Padme.
We see him start his rampage, though.
Yeah, but we never see him actually kill someone. I mean, we see the lightsaber go off, and he kind of does it inside a tent.
Right.
But we never actually see violence.
Sure.
It's implied.
Yeah.
And then he admits it all to Padme. But then, for the rest of the movie, he's very impulsive. He's very...
erratic. I mean,
he wants to go after Padme after she falls off the ship.
Yeah.
He wants to go after Dooku alone.
I'm really glad you brought this up.
Yeah, we had to go back to that because we glossed over that. It's very important part.
So big because this is really the beginning of his quest for redemption.
Yeah.
I mean, right there, going after Padme when there was no reason to, or when they forbid it, it's because he starts doing all these impulsive things because he desperately needs to prove himself so he can forgive himself for killing all those sand people.
Sure.
And sand children.
Yeah. So
I mean, he's a murderer at this point.
He's got a guilty conscience going on.
And it's not like he did it with a gun. He had a glowing blade and thrust it into the bodies, the living bodies, all these sand people and their children.
Right.
Murderer.
Right.
So he's got blood on his hands.
Yeah.
And so that explains a lot of the impulsive behavior. And I think Ahsoka, even though she respects and loves him, I think she really starts to sense that.
Sure. Yeah. So we see him kill Dooku, and this is the first time he's actually killed someone like that we see on screen.
Cold blood in front of someone else.
Yes.
So that's the other thing. That's another bonding thing right there for him and Palpatine, is the fact that, like, unlike what the Sand people on Tatooine when he was totally alone,
right?
This is something where he's...
Another point to make, though.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan doesn't see it.
See what?
Him kill Dooku.
No.
Obi-Wan was off doing
He wasn't trying to get Grievous?
I think so.
And he does that goofy shoots him with the blaster?
No, that's later on. They're still on the ship.
Okay.
Dooku, I think Obi-Wan was busy with fighting off Dooku's minions.
It's a good point, though, because that is one other thing that drives him further from Obi and closer to the Emperor, or the Chancellor. Or
yeah.
Because he's complicit in the crime with him.
Yes.
He told him to do it.
Yeah.
So he has that with him. Whereas Obi-Wan is still virtuous white knight.
Yes.
And he's still stained and dirty from murdering all those poor sand people.
Who were the villains in the first movie, by the way?
Yeah, that's true. So now we pick up Padme is pregnant, presumably through sex. I mean, not confirmed, but presumably.
For some reason, I think sex involves...
I really thought that they were going to say that Obi-Wan was the father.
I know.
I really thought it was going to go
there. That was going to be like kind of the...
That would be the switch.
The love triangle that kind of didn't really happen in the original trilogy happens in the prequels.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be what drove them apart. Was that?
But I like as much as I thought that, I think it plays out fine the way it is because again, I think Lucas had it. Like everything was intentional with Lucas. Like making Obi-Wan the character that he was. Like, Obi-Wan isn't, like, so they go into the Clone Wars of how he may or may not have had this relationship with Satine, but they never really come out and say that they had a relationship, because I think Obi-Wan as a character is very flawed as well, and he can't really deal with relationships either.
And I think he's also one of those guys who, unlike Anakin, who was like, well, I'll just step over the line and pretend I didn't.
Yeah.
He's someone I think who might step over the line and then run back.
Right.
So he might have slept with Satine one night and then it's like, oh my god, I'm horrible.
Right.
And then like not talk to her for a year.
Right. Yeah. Which is probably what happened because where they pick up in the storyline in the Clone Wars, there's awkwardness between them.
Completely.
Yeah.
So I feel like, okay. Anyhow.
So.
A little less true to himself.
Yeah. So. So Padme's pregnant through sex. For some reason, I think there's a medical droid involved in the sex acts, but that's just me.
Well, Anakin needs something he can relate to in the room.
No, I don't think it's just Anakin. I think that's just how sex happens in Star Wars. There has to be a medical droid present.
Sure. Well, it's a messy process, and so. So she's pregnant.
She's pregnant.
He's having dreams and visions of her dying.
Right, which is something new to Star Wars. They've never really shown like dreams,
cutaway dream things.
Yeah, so that was a weird scene for to happen in Star Wars.
Yeah, and it's just creepy.
Yeah.
It's that face.
Yeah. It was kind of like is he having a wet dream? What's going on?
Petit de l'amour, the little death. So I always felt like it was presumable that Palpatine is pushing these dreams on him.
Oh, okay.
But it's also totally within the realm that he's just damaged and worried about losing something else.
Yeah, just troubled.
Just troubled boy.
Yeah, and
so effectively, also killing Dooku also represents kind of an end to the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the big game, is to end the Separatists. That guy's the leader of the Separatists. And so
Dooku, who
was a Jedi.
Yeah, there was Dooku was the villain in the movies, but like as we kind of find out throughout the Clone Wars, is like he's not all bad.
No, in fact,
his intentions were good.
In fact, Dooku is portrayed as one of the first fallen Jedi in, I can't think I actually say, a millennia, but it's at least hundreds of years, I get the impression. Because even when Dooku's, first separates from the Republic, they're like, they report something he's done, and Samuel L. Jackson goes, Mace Windu says, "Oh, he couldn't do that. He was a member of the Jedi Order. He couldn't murder somebody. That's crazy."
Right.
You know, like, that's so against us.
Yeah.
And he talks about how he'd been friends with Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Because Qui-Gon was his Padawan.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah, so he's on that out there French, too.
Yeah, so I think there was, like, Dooku wasn't a bad guy. Like, I think he was being manipulated by Palpatine. Mm-hmm. But, like, he was doing good, but going about it in a wrong way.
Yeah.
And being manipulated by Palpatine, not making it any better.
Yeah.
You know? So, unfortunately, he comes to an end, kind of abruptly. We unfairly...
He took Anakin's hand. Anakin took his head.
Yeah, it's not really
and
fair what happens to him. Yeah.
Because he cuts his hands off first, right? Oh, God.
Yeah, it's so awful.
Yeah, that was when it's like, guess what? PG-13. Real deal.
Right.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. So from there... Anakin goes off to... Where does he go from there? What happens in the movie after that?
Oh, a whole bunch of stuff, Ron. But ultimately, he ends up fighting... What?
Well, so he has the dreams and he's worried about Padme dying.
Yes. Oh, that's right. And then we have the big crux where he is at the opera house thing.
Yes.
And he talks with the Emperor. Emperor, knowing that he committed murder... Mm-hmm. Is, like, no, you're still a good boy, everything's okay, don't worry about it, chill out.
Yeah.
And then he's talking to him and he's like, because I think he even implies that he kind of knows about the relationship with him and Padme.
Right.
And he's like, you ever heard the legend of Darth Plagueis?
Right.
And he talks about there was this Jedi who could create life. Now, that's been a big thing for a long time, so I think we've all wondered, is the Emperor implying that he created Anakin? That he's Anakin's father on some level?
Yeah, it does feel like he implied that.
Yeah, because the Sith can create life.
Right.
Yeah. Now,
I go back to... So basically Palpatine was on, like, a diplomatic mission and kind of stops off in Tatooine for a drink, runs into Padme. They have a one-night thing. He never calls her again. Boom, she's pregnant. She doesn't want to admit that she fooled around, so she tells Qui-Gon, there's no father.
Yeah, there's no father. She's like grossed out because she slept with that really old guy. She thought he was rich, and then he ran off. She feels dirty and low.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Typical story. Right? So the Darth Plagueis novel by Jay Luciano, or whatever his name is.
Sure.
It gives another explanation. And it's a really good explanation that I now reject because I was rewatching some footage.
Okay.
Rewatching some footage just today of the Emperor in Revenge of the Sith after he kills Mace Windu and he's full on Sith evil looking.
Yes.
And in that book they have him coming from Naboo and stuff.
Yeah.
And I know he's a representative of Naboo and everything, but I actually like to believe that he is a totally different race of being.
Oh, okay.
And, I like to believe that, that politician thing was his mask the whole time, and he was always gross looking.
Okay.
Because the book kind of explains it more like the Force lightning changes you. And
well, they never really... Maybe this is something that they'll pursue in the sequels, but, Palpatine is the only one that, he's so dark side that it alters his... features.
Right.
He's so evil that it just makes his face wither.
Melt. Yeah.
Vader's evil, and we'll get to this later, but Vader's evil, but we see him in a mask all the time, so we never get to really see him.
Although he's clearly pretty aged up by the end.
Yeah, but he's not melted.
Been 30 years.
He's not melted.
Yeah.
Palpatine melts in a matter of, a day.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
A matter of, minutes. You watch him go from one to the
other.
other.
So evil, it just destroys him.
Which is why I always like the idea of it being a mask, kind of.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, maybe they don't really, they don't talk about it that much. But maybe we'll see that again in the sequels. Maybe we'll see, someone that's so evil. Maybe maybe it'll be Luke. He'll be all melty and gross.
I don't like that. I don't like the idea. It's kind of cool the idea that the Force ages you and stuff, but he looks I know some people think it looks really hokey, and I agree. The Palpatine looks a little hokey after it turns into a monster alien, but I think it also looks really cool, kinda,
Right.
And I like the idea that it's a totally different race. So I'm going to, as much as I like the Darth Plagueis novel, I'm washing it away with Legends.
All right.
Yes.
All right. I'll keep that in mind when I do read it.
Even though they have a great take on a young Palpatine.
While we're on Legends, I just want to bring this up. I started to reread Dark Empire by the Dark Horse series.
Yeah.
I don't think that Luke is going to turn to the dark side in Episode 7 because I think it'll be too much of a repeat of what happened in Dark Empire.
Yeah, and that's so. I think it's kind of universally fandom. Everyone kind of regards that as sort of whack.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't think that'll happen. It seems like the rumors we've heard a lot about that. It feels like stuff that's already been told.
Yeah, and we talked about this offline. I would turn into such a mowing fanboy if that happened.
Yeah, right.
Just
right.
Fecal matter, all kinds of throwing at the screen, blind rage. And I would be very upset for Mark Hamill to have the career he's had and then finally get to come back to a big widescreen release. Star Wars, he's back.
And he's evil.
And he's an evil guy.
Yeah.
Whack.
All right, so Anakin, we're getting towards the end here of Anakin turning to Darth Vader.
Right. So he has gotten himself so worked up and so worried that he's going to lose this orbital complex relationship he has with the mother of his children.
Right. Because he lost his mom.
Yeah. And this person who's both been his lover and surrogate mother to him, now the mother of his unborn children, is going to be he's worried that he's gonna lose her somehow.
Right.
Which I still think is some kind of outcropping of his guilt. You know what I mean? He feels like he doesn't deserve it.
Sure.
And also the fact that he's very uncomfortable with things he can't control. He's very uncomfortable with the idea of, probably because of his slave background. This is probably also why he has such a problem with authority with the Jedi.
Right.
Is that if he can't control something, he has a real problem with it.
Right.
His relationship with Padme has shown that he's very controlling in some ways.
Sure.
Loving in some ways, but if they do something that he doesn't like, very controlling.
Right.
And has a very comfortable relationship with machines who he can program and tell what to do.
Right.
So
I want to bring up two things here.
Yeah.
Lucas
can't have children.
Right. And he had a troubled relationship with Marsha.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up adopting one child, and then he gets a divorce from her, and then has two more children that he adopts.
Yeah, he also buried her in some kind of mountain of money to take custody of that child, that first child.
Yeah, we're still doing a hard search for where Marsha Lucas is today.
Yeah, this is very much like the mother of Prince Jackson, just missing.
Yeah. Crap. I had another point.
The relationship is...
I know what the other point was. Yeah. So Lucas has been, as we were talking about before, he always kind of leaves himself out with storytelling, and the way he tells stories, he killed Obi-Wan Kenobi off because at the end of Star Wars, he didn't really have much for old Ben to do while Luke was, flying the X-Wing on the Death Star.
Right, yes.
Right?
Right, yeah.
So,
what's he going to do?
He's like, well, I'll just kill him off. Right?
But what a way to kill him off.
Yeah, right.
Magical disappearance.
Right. So, it's almost like and this is totally ridiculous, but I'm going to throw it out there.
Yeah, go.
He didn't, there was nowhere else for Lucas to go but turn Anakin to, the dark side, because what's he going to do? Tell the story of Anakin going out and getting Pampers? Raising two kids?
I see what you're saying.
that's not really a story to tell. You know, that's like, oh, Anakin, you have to get up and, you know, change the diapers.
Well, I think that there's a lot of options of things that could happen, you know what I mean, to like make him go dark.
Right.
But one of the things, because like we were talking about, if I would have written it, if you would have made the first two, and then he came to me and was like, JP, these movies aren't going over as well as I thought they would. You have to save us. You're our only hope.
Right.
I would have written it so it was a love triangle situation, and Padme was sleeping with Obi-Wan, and she gets pregnant from Obi-Wan, and
right.
they have, and that's the dark split. Now, the thing about that is, though, then you're putting it all on exterior motives that you can kind of rationalize with. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's his fall from grace is, as it's presented, is internal. You know,
sure.
like he's made decisions that were bad, and feels so guilty. Society, there's a lot of pressure put on him from society, but he's made these like choices, like murdering sand people, and just taking all these shortcuts and stuff, cutting off the head of Count Dooku, where he now has developed this complex of like he doesn't deserve things. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's purposeful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
His fall comes from an internal place.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Also, just a thought. I just had this thought too. Is so Lucas writes Star Wars, and there's clearly a love triangle being built between Leia and Luke and Han. You know, Han and Luke both have a thing for Leia. You know, there's that whole scene in the cockpit of the Falcon. You know, do you think a girl like her could go for a guy like me? No.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a great scene.
Yeah.
You know, and those were, in a way, those were happier times for Lucas, right?
Right.
And then
When it could be playful like that.
right, and then you know, Marcia ends up falling for the Carpenter.
No, he's
right?
not Carpenter.
The
He's
handyman.
Well, he's more than a handyman. He's a designer. He's an
Designer.
artist. He
Right?
made the glass
Right?
dome ceiling, and yeah.
So as much as you and I are talking about, like, oh yeah, you know, a love triangle would have made sense for, you know, to come into play with the prequels, with, you know, Obi-Wan, and, you know, kind of falling in love with Padme, you know, behind Anakin's back. I maintain that that's too painful for Lucas to write about.
Sure.
Right? He could,
Right.
even though it's happened to him, he can't write about it because, in a way, he's never gotten over it.
Right. I mean, it's funny, though, because if that's the case, you would think that he would then, if Anakin is his Cypher character, this might go to support your idea that that Anakin's not George Lucas, but George Lucas's father.
Yes.
Because if he's George Lucas, then why wouldn't it be he was betrayed by this other guy, and then he wreaks fiery vengeance by becoming this like man in a mechanical shell?
Sure. I mean,
so I don't know a lot about his father, but it's an interesting read to be like.
Yeah, I mean, what I've read is, you know, he was a typical father, you know, kind of blue collar family.
Did his father grow up in the Depression?
The 30s, right? Probably, yeah. But you know, his father was
kind of a slave.
But his father was, you know, like you know, just kind of a strict guy. Like Lucas, you know, didn't really get along with him, but you know, like ended up being proud of him for what he accomplished. So, like,
so it's not a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we come down to he ends up. That's basically the bargaining chip the Emperor uses to make him go dark.
Yes.
Is that like, hey, you know what? If you're worried about losing people, I can show you a way to
fix
never
that.
lose anything.
Yeah.
Now, at
that
this
works
point,
immediately.
At this point, he has to kind of know, and he's built like years of foundation of being a surrogate father figure.
Yes.
But at this point, he has to kind of know there's something up, because he says you can't learn from the Jedi; it's a Sith thing.
Right.
So even if he's putting it out of his mind, he's got to kind of know.
Right.
And he's encountered at this point Darth Maul, or at least heard a lot of stories about him, and he's encountered Count Dooku. He knows what happens to Sith.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
He knows that the dark way, nothing good comes of it. But in his way, it's like self-sacrifice. It's like, who cares about me? I'm going to save Padme.
Right.
Finally, I'm going to save people and get this black mark of the day that I murdered those beautiful sand people.
Right.
Wiped away.
After I murder some younglings.
Yeah,
first.
you know, a couple of younglings. Oh, so heartbreaking. So he participates in kind of a genocide.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Straight up.
Yeah.
No.
So.
In a very hands-on way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so he kills younglings.
With the help of the clone troopers who've grown to respect him.
Wait, the clone troopers are there and killing younglings too?
Yeah, clone troopers are like he doesn't murder everyone in the Temple of Solo. Like,
Oh, I thought he did.
I think that there's clone troopers. I think there's blast marks, and because Yoda and Obi-Wan are looking through it, and he's like, I can't believe clone troopers, and then like Yoda's like, these aren't all blast marks.
that would have been awesome if there was like a scene where like Obi-Wan and Yoda are walking through like all the dead younglings, and Yoda's like, sand people, and Obi-Wan is like, no, these blast marks are too accurate for sand people.
Yeah, it's like, why would sand people be here, Yoda?
Like, why are you so racist against sand people? Always sand people with you.
If we could have been writers in the Clone Wars, we could have written a whole little arc in there where Yoda's like an old racist and just hates sand people, and that's why, and he actually trains Anakin to hate him. That's his sin. That's why he's exiled.
Yeah, that's right.
So
we're leading to the downfall of Anakin right now.
Right.
Like they
killing the younglings. The Order 66 has come down.
Yes.
The clone troopers programmed with Order 66 in their head.
Palpatine meets with with Anakin, and basically knights him.
Yeah.
Darth Vader.
Yes.
I proclaim you are now a Sith. You're now Darth Vader.
On the altar of Mace Windu's murder.
Yeah. Did it happen before or after Mace Windu's murder?
I thought it happened right afterwards.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Maybe
that
not.
makes sense.
Maybe not.
Nah, I think it happened after.
Well, no, yeah, because you're right. Because at that point, he's like, you have to choose, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
because remember, he's like, because Mace has pretty much firmly got the Emperor down.
Yes. So, my question is like, I wish they would have like explained where, like, they just pulled Darth Vader out of the air. Like, yeah, you're gonna be
Darth Vader.
Vader.
Yeah, is that what it means? German.
It means Darth Vader in some language. Yeah. But they don't like ever like, where does that name come from? You know, it's not like you see like, you know, they cut away to like at a certain point they cut away to Palpatine. And he's looking through a name of like Sith babies.
Yeah.
Like, Vader. That's a good name.
Well,
Don't name him Vader.
It's one of those things where it's like if you could interview the fictional character of the Emperor, it's like, why did you name him Darth Vader? It's like, and for that matter, why are you Darth Sidious? You know, it's like,
oh, that would have been a great scene too. Like they kill Mace Windu, and you know, like Palpatine names Darth Vader, and then he walks out of the room, and like the press is there, and they're like in his face, Palpatine, why did you name him Vader?
Yeah.
Whatever in the Mace Windu. And they're like,
what happened to that great hero, General Anakin?
Yeah, he's like, no comments.
Well, he's, or he just explains it straight up, it's like, well, my name's Darth Sidious, because I'm really into Sidious. You see what I did there, right? I took off the N and Darth Sidious. Vader, I don't know, it's one of those names like Cable or something. It just came to me. It's cool. But he's really the David Brent, I guess. But so we all know how it goes down. He kills all these Jedi, kills all these little younglings.
Yes.
Goes on a
he kills all
Padme confronts him in a scene I love.
Well, wait. Palpatine says you have to go off and kill all the separatists.
Yeah, and and the Jedi are separatists.
Yes,
that's what he's saying. It was part of their plot.
Yeah, you have to go off and go to Mustafar.
And they actually sell that pretty well in Revenge of the Sith. That like it does kind of seem like maybe the Jedi are bad.
Right. So he's going off. He confronts Padme.
Yep.
And that's your big scene.
Oh yeah. Anakin, you're going somewhere I can't follow. Anakin, you're breaking my heart.
Yeah.
I love it.
Great movie.
Great movie. But he almost chokes her because he's going so dark already at this point.
Yeah.
And
the droids are just there, like, kind of hanging
just
out.
witnessing domestic abuse as they do day in and day out.
They do in every movie.
Yeah. And then he has a big confrontation with Obi-Wan.
Yes.
You go over the top confrontation, takes the high, he tries to jump even though Obi's got the high ground, loses his legs, and then finally flips the fuck out and gives that awesome, I hate you! Yeah. And because that's when you really realize that this is a character who's had resentment building since he was 10 years old.
Yes, it's the big
even
release.
Earlier.
It's the big release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see what it gets him ultimately, but it's cool because it's like, oh my god, this guy has been shit on his whole life and he hates everyone.
Yeah.
There's no one left he has a connection to except Padme.
Right.
Who he's also in danger of losing, very close. And then when the Emperor scoops him up and vacuum packs him in that little suit.
So, I know you were watching YouTube videos before this episode with highlights. I wanted to watch something to just refresh my memory because I can't remember. Obi-Wan cuts off his legs.
Yes.
And both his arms or just one arm? Like, what's mechanical on...
I think it's just one arm.
So, but he already had one mechanical arm. So he basically has two mechanical legs and now two mechanical arms.
Do you use an arm or a hand?
I
think Dooku took a hand.
Okay. So one arm, a hand from Dooku, and then two legs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So he basically...
He
has mechanical limbs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's certainly some sort of damage to his lungs.
Yeah.
From all the heat and smoke.
Right. Burnt and yeah.
Yes.
So that leads us to the scene that we were going to get to, where said we were going to end the episode, was the big no.
That's right.
Palpatine drops the bomb on him that, no, you killed Padme because you broke her heart.
Well, I don't think he says broke her heart, right?
No, she said the medical droids say that, but he says he's responsible for her death.
Yeah, and I think he thinks that it's because he went so dark and lost control and killed her.
Yes,
right,
because he has no memory of what he did.
Yeah, he's like, what?
No. Yeah. Very, very Frankenstein type scene.
What's weird? That I remember is so cringeworthy when it came out.
It is.
But as the years have gone by, I'm kind of into it.
Yeah,
am I crazy, or is it kind of cool?
No one thinks it's cool, but I mean, cool. I think it's part of
kind of cool.
It's Vader very early on. He doesn't even know how to walk yet, so he's like.
That's right. Which I mean,
it's a very bizarre scene. The next time we see Vader chronologically, he's busting through the door of the blockade runner, and he's walking like a man, and he's taller than everyone, and he's
scary,
ordering everyone, and and here we have a guy that looks awkward in the suit because it's a different actor completely. It's not Dave Prose.
Yeah.
It's actually Hayden Christensen. He got to wear the.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, he got to wear it.
Good for Hayden.
But Hayden Christensen is not the same physique as Dave Prose.
I don't know what you mean. No, certainly. I think it's presumable he's got some upgrades. He's probably wearing lifts at that point. The next one. Yeah. It's like I'd be a lot scarier if I was just a few inches taller.
I'm not saying that it doesn't fit. I'm just saying it's an awkward scene because it's like you're seeing Vader become Vader for the first time.
Yes, he's not full Vader or Anakin anymore.
Yeah, he's basically just got out of surgery.
You know what's a weird thing? And I think other people talked about this, but I always thought that you were going to see him piece by piece become Vader.
Oh, right.
Kind of like how, because I thought that's kind of what was implied within the original trilogy. Luke loses a hand, he's got a black hand. Yeah. So I thought we were going to really see that progression, but it was all Vader at once.
Right. I always thought that we would see somebody in the prequels that looked like Vader, like they had a Vader type mask.
No, sure.
right?
Sure.
And they just...
I think you kind of do. I mean, I think Grievous has a kind of a Vaderish look.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the big villains I think that he takes inspiration from down later on.
Sure. But I always thought, like, well, we're about ready to start, end this episode and move on to, the Vader episode.
Yeah.
But, like...
Next week.
Next week. But I always thought that, there would be some type of more samurai-looking characters like Vader was inspired by.
Yeah. That's a weird thing about Lucas, though. He never really pays it forward in that way, does he?
No, he doesn't.
No.
He doesn't.
He really never he never puts something in his stuff that, like, straight up says, like, okay, here's a samurai character in the prequels, because we all know I was into that Japanese culture stuff back in the day.
Right.
He
doesn't.
And you never hear him in interviews really talk about it either.
No.
Like, unlike, we talked about this a little bit a while ago, unlike someone like George R.R. Martin, who talks about, like, Stan Lee is just as influential on me as Shakespeare.
Sure.
And I feel like him and George Lucas are really part of the same class in that way of, like, part of that Gen 1 of fandom who was there on the ground floor at the first conventions and stuff, but the difference is, like, one owns it, and George Lucas really doesn't.
Right.
And I guess that's probably because he's had to spend a lot of time in the machine of the empire that he's built.
Yes.
Being very litigious, and being very careful about, like, well, if I fucking say that I took a lot of inspiration from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, I might end up having to pay money.
Yeah, right. Which
is probably a good point for us to say good night to Anakin.
I think so.
I feel really good about it. Do we want to do a little thing of Jake Lloyd, Hayden Christensen, little send-off for them? I think both actors did a great job.
I think they both did a great job. I feel bad for the rap that they take.
Especially that Lloyd. I mean, he seems to have had a horrible childhood.
Well, yeah, Jake Lloyd, who he goes to school in town here, Columbia College in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure we'll get him on the podcast.
That's one of our goals. He seems to be a fan of Star Wars still, but
really?
He has he says, like, I've seen him post on Facebook. He has, like, Star Wars stuff.
Oh, good. He should be owning it because he can eat out on that.
But he
for
has
a
a
while.
hard time.
He got bullied.
Yeah, like he continues to get bullied. Not just by the fans, but, like, people. I've watched interviews on YouTube. Guys, wanting to interview him, and then just kind of
shitting on him.
Yeah, I was like, dude, that's not cool.
Yeah,
like, that's not cool to, like, take this kid who's still a kid. I mean, he's still, like,
he's got to be 22-ish.
Yeah, I mean, he's still young.
Yeah.
Like, that's not cool to be, throwing your hatred at him because of your hang-ups. Like, the kid, like, he did his best.
Yeah. And Hayden Christensen recently, have him and his girl had the kid yet?
I don't know if they've had a kid, but yeah, he's not doing too bad for himself.
He's living life. He seems happy. Saw a picture of him. He looked like he was in good shape.
Yeah, I think he's got some samurai movie coming out or something.
Oh, that's right. I saw that.
Yeah. So,
do you think he'll ever come back to the Star Wars fold? You think it's just too hated?
Know.
I think there's a lot of hate on him.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing him again.
I want it, straight up. I think he deserves it.
I want him to have a career. I mean, whether it's Star Wars or not.
Well, just in the same way that I love the fact that Mark Hamill's coming back, I would love to see Hayden back. With just as much verve. Sure.
Yeah, so... those were the two characters that portrayed Anakin so far. So,
so
if
with
you don't have anything else, I guess we'll put Anakin to bed.
Yeah. Good night, sweet prince.
Good night, Annie.
Little Annie. Little Annie.
We'll pick this up next week with the Vader episode.
That was the story of the greatest.
Little Annie.
No.